My dad really stressed that in the military, people are green. He's like, you're not black, you're not white, you're green. In my mind, I was like standing up for what I thought was the right thing to stand up for. From the moment that man leaned across the table and asked me if I was gay or not, about 10 days later, I was being kicked out of the Marine Corps. There was a part of me that when I joined the military, I thought joining would just be the hardest part. And I think if I were to talk to like a young Marine now, I would remind them like, no, that's just like step one. It's almost like when you go to college, and a lot of people think like, oh, I made it. And it's like, well, that's just the beginning.
It's just, you got in.
You just got in. And even that is like, you got into this thing. Now you have like to start. When I was in boot camp, and you hear like C-130s, and you hear like when you smell like the uniforms and the leather and the boots and stuff like that, and when you're around all the gear and the equipment, that's just being home for me. That's like where I grew up. That is like, I still have a lot of that stuff around my dad's and stuff. Learning new weapon systems, all of that stuff. And it was just like being home. I wish I'd had a little bit more guidance and mentorship, either from someone else or whatever. But at the end of the day, I was feeling like a little bit like, I don't know what to do next, or where am I going from here? And the Marine Corps kind of took care of it for me. They made me into this guy who, when asked, would answer questions, which, like in the way that I thought I was supposed to answer them, with honesty and integrity. And then when questions came up about gays in the military or sexual preferences and stuff like that, there was questions I wasn't really willing to answer in certain ways. I was at the Armory, and we were scrubbing our 50 cals. It was this big, huge crew-served weapon. And I remember we were cleaning these 50 cals and scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing. And everyone's just sort of around this big concrete table, like knitting, like old ladies knitting.
Just gossiping about what,
and
whatnot.
talking. And just shooting the shit in the breeze, and telling big fish stories and stuff. And this guy across from me is like, did you hear what happened over in Fox Company? I was in Weapons Company. Like across the hallway was Fox Company. And I'm like, no. And he's like, there's a bunch of bad words in this story.
That's fine. You can, whatever you feel comfortable with. And
I just try to remember it the way it was said to me, because it has like a vulgarness to it, but it's honestly like, anyway, this guy's chewing tobacco, and he's like, you hear about those fucking faggots over at Fox Company? And then and everyone's like going on and on about it. And then he's like, turns out they went out to the strip and they picked up these two prostitutes and they were fucking them, and then blah, blah, blah. And it goes on and on and on. And it turns out they were men dressed as women, and it gets all at hand, and they beat them up. And then they tell the platoon, and the platoon beats them up, and then they call the CPs, they come and they throw them off base. And they kind of mix their way around the table, and everyone is like sort of in, fucking this, negative, this thing, blah, blah, blah. And it gets to me, and I'm just like this brass wire thing. I was like, no, I don't think there's a problem with that. And I was like, if a guy walked across the bar to me and asked me for my phone number, I'd be flattered. I've had to ask people for their phone numbers, and it's a very human experience. Someone did it to me, I'd just be flattered. And I was just scrubbing my brush the whole time, and I just realized it got really quiet all around me. And I look up, and everyone's like, what are you doing? And it was like, well, the Marine Corps, like, in my mind, I was like standing up for what I thought was the right thing to stand up for the people who weren't there. And for people who are there. And I started having this whole conversation, and it goes back and forth, and like it just starts escalating into like, didn't you read your Bible, and like all that kind of stuff, and like all kinds of like pathways. And I was like, I swore an oath to defend the Constitution. My dad really stressed that in the military, people are green. He's like, you're not black, you're not white, you're green. And like he's like, when I have to send people up hills to go fight bad guys, I can't sit there and pick favorites and do all kinds of stuff. He's like, I've got to treat everyone equally. And the military, you're in like these classrooms where there's like everyone in the room has a completely different accent. Everyone in the room is from some different part of the United States, and their families and cultures are all kind of mixed together, and like everyone's just mixed, and you're just making it work. We're all human and we're all real, but like, you're just making it work. But anyway, that conversation just kept going and kept going, and it was like all of a sudden my back was like against the wall, and like I just remember thinking like, this isn't going to end well. And this corporal, he's a really great guy, and he had a big piece of tobacco in his mouth, and he like knife-handed me. And he's like, Sheehan, are you a fucking faggot? And I was like, Corporal, you're not supposed to ask me that. And that like ended that conversation very abruptly. Because he outranked me, and it was in front of all these people, and it was like, what are you doing, you know, and why is this like, these are my brothers. These are all people I would have died for, and these are all men I deeply respected, and like some of the finest men I've ever met. And it had just completely unraveled, and like this image of me in that national anthem film before the, like all of that stuff, it was just completely like crusting apart and falling apart. And like the idea of like, oh shit. I ended up calling my dad from the barracks, and I was telling him like, yeah, I think I'm gonna get in trouble, and I think they know I'm gay, and you know, et cetera, and that was the first I'd ever talked to my dad about any of this. So coming out to my dad because I was worried that he was going to be heartbroken about me being kicked out of the Marine Corps, and to have his response be like, I love you, I got your back, this is what you got to do. You know, and that meant a lot to me. And at the moment, I don't think it even really registered. As much as that image of me as a Marine just blew the dust, like he was still real. The guy inside whatever like Russian doll of the military he was.
Your dad.
Yeah, my dad. And he still knew like deep down inside, he's got, his first job is to be my dad. It escalated into more and more conversations, and it was more and more like, everyone formation, okay, everyone fall out. Sheehan, can we talk to you for a few minutes? And then it just slowly turned into like more and more chevrons and more rank, and then more and more. I remember one time they at one point they bring me into this room, and it was like, I'm a Lance Corporal. I'm like as pretty low on the totem pole, and it's all of these like gunnies and staff sergeants, and they're all like, I mean, it was like thick, like you couldn't even, you move through the room without bumping into one. And like, sit down, Sheehan, and I immediately knew like I am fucked. Like if I'm being told to sit down. But anyway, I sit down, and he starts reading me my Miranda rights, and I just remember thinking to myself, my parents met in college getting their criminal justice degrees. And my mother was like, if anyone ever reads you your Miranda rights, exercise them. Like, don't say anything and get a lawyer. And I get to the end, and I'm like, it's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I think I should talk to a lawyer. And they're like, all right, go down to JAG and go get a lawyer. And I'm like, all right. So I just walk out of my barracks, and I walk across base to the JAG office, which is like the military lawyers. And then there's all these people in there who like aren't paying their alimony, or they've got like too many parking tickets. And they're like, fill out this form while you're here. And I was like, my platoon, and this is like the 4th grade like reading and writing ability. My unit is trying to kick me out for being gay. And the guy just takes it and he puts it into the shredder. And he's like, let's go upstairs. And he just takes me right upstairs to see a lawyer. And he was a captain, and that's like, I'm standing up, and he's like, relax, I'm just a lawyer. And we start talking, and I explained to him what was going on. He's like, yeah, this shouldn't be happening to you. What's happening right now, they're not supposed to be asking these questions, not supposed to be doing any of this stuff. And it just sort of escalated out of control. And my career in the Marine Corps very quickly came to the end. From the moment that man leaned across the table and asked me if I was gay or not, about 10 days later, I was being kicked out of the Marine Corps. And I was one of the first guys, like the first like 100 guys to receive an honorable discharge for homosexual conduct. And if you look at my DD-214, it says that I'm like not eligible for reenlistment, and that reason for separation is homosexual act. And it was one of those things where I kind of knew like, okay, this is going to be like a black eye for a long time. This is going to, where have you been in the last 2 years, et cetera. And I have to tell you.